time what is going on, and if the comment is relevant to that discussion, then just copy paste it,
Sure.
and later on you can copy paste the other comments also which were not relevant in the first place.
We are already running live, I think, right?
We are.
Yes.
Yeah, okay. So, good evening, everybody. Welcome to the next session of Optometry Council of India, which we are streaming live on Facebook. And thanks to everybody in attendance. Being a Sunday, I think all of you have taken the trouble to attend this session. So, thanks a lot for that. I'll get into the session right away. So when you look at the objectives of Optometry Council of India, one of the third objective is development and implementation of best practice standards. So that's been one of the main goals, and to also popularize the importance of comprehensive eye exam to all the optometry practitioners in India. If you look at other practices around the world where optometry is regularized, all the bodies who are a regulatory body, they always have a standard best practice standard, which each optometrist, each practicing optometrist is obligated to follow. We being a self-regulatory body, we've just come out with this, and we're trying to implement it with all the practicing optometrists as much as possible. So let me just take you through the best practice standard document. It was launched in 2017 during the World Council of Optometry Congress at Hyderabad. What does the document mean, and what does it say? So in the first part of the document, we deal with the general guidelines for the practices in terms of, you have to be cordial to the patient, you have to provide sufficient time in an appointment for a comprehensive eye exam so that you make sure that you spend enough time with the in each eye examination, and also respect patients' opinion in terms of history or what they would like to be done in terms of their eyes and stuff like that. So that covers the initial part of the best practice standard guidelines. Coming to the setup of the practice, I know some of these might sound very difficult to implement, but I think slowly we'll have to get into this kind of a mode where we provide adequate space in terms of having all our equipments, the dispensing, spectacle dispensing services, and also provide access to the, disabled. So we should have some kind of access to the practice, which allows the entry of a wheelchair, whenever the need arises for such patients to come in. And I think with the geriatric population also growing slowly in our country, slowly we will each practice will definitely find the need to have this within their practices. The third one is in the importance of having medical records, and the medical records being confidential with you and the patient, in terms of only you as an optometrist or a healthcare professional, and the patient is aware as to what's going into the medical record in terms of assessment, your recording of the findings that you found out, and so on. And once the government council is in place, all this also would be part of the implementation in terms of maintaining medical records and the confidentiality with the patient as well. So because legally this is quite important, as we grow as a profession as well. Management is where we basically discuss all the tests that you've done and what the findings are. And also, if you see here, it says apply relevant clinical guidelines and adopt latest evidence-based techniques. So that's very important. So how do you get to know of all of this? By attending various seminars and sessions, and also being abreast with whatever publications are coming out in the peer-reviewed journals. So it's very, very important that we are having the current knowledge as health professionals, and we adopt any latest evidence-based techniques that is being published or in the press in terms of all the examination procedures. And you provide the patient with information about their ocular condition, that's the diagnosis, and as well as what's your management plan for the same thing. Even if it is simple, let's say presbyope, and you're going to manage that condition by providing reading glasses or progressives or bifocal, whatever the choice of the patient may be, you'll have to explain all of that as to what are the different options, and then you make the patient choose, or if the situation arises, if the patient says, no, what do you recommend? Then you choose on the patient's behalf, keeping in mind what the occupation of the patient is and so on. So all that, it comes under management, and that needs to be recorded as well in your medical records, saying that this is what you advised and what the patient is willing to choose, or your recommendation. Now, coming to referrals, it's very important that everybody follows a standard format for referral, and they also give the entire details of your examination so that the ophthalmologist whom you're referring to, or a general physician in case you're referring for a diabetic checkup or so on, what is the reason for your referral, what are your findings, for example, vision or slit lamp, and what exactly do you need that person to do in terms of handling this patient whom you're referring. So all that goes into the details of a referral. Coming to the actual second part of the document, which is the procedural guidelines. Here we, as you can see, there's history, visual acuity, and refraction. So basically it tells you to take all the family history, medical history, whether the person is under any medication, general history of the patient, and so on. And also, if they can provide the names of the doctors whom they have been under, whose care they have been under, just in case if you have to contact that person for some kind of cross information in terms of the medical history. Then when you look at visual acuity, you might say, oh, what's so new in this? It's just saying distance visual acuity, near visual acuity, nothing in detail is mentioned. Well, when we made this document, this was based on 3 other documents that were already available. One is the ILOCS document, which ASCO had put together, which is the entry-level competency standard for optometrists. That means when a person graduates from a 4-year course, what's the expectation that that graduate should know? So that is in the ILOCS document already. So we had to refer to that. And we also had 2 other documents on best practices, one from the UK and also one from Australia. So we had to refer to all of this before we came out with this particular document. And the reason why we haven't mentioned something like distance visual acuity to be measured by Snellen chart or by logMAR and things like that, we've not gone into the specifics, is because tomorrow there might be some other test which becomes a standard in terms of measuring visual acuity, or there might be some other standard in terms of measuring near visual acuity. So, which means we cannot keep changing the guidelines as, what can I say, science evolves, or the instruments that we are dependent on for a comprehensive eye examination, as those equipment evolve, we can't keep changing the guidelines. So that's the reason why we've not made it very, very specific. And this was also from the experience people who advised us not to be very specific, especially from Australia and UK, the people whom we were referring to and the documents that we were based on. So that also gave us a clue that we should not get into too much of specifics. And same thing with the refraction. It says objective measurement of refractive status, including cycloplegic refraction if required. Now, people might ask, oh, we are not allowed to use dilatation drops. So how is that it's mentioned here? Well, some states, governments have it very clearly written saying that cycloplegia cannot be done by optometrists. But in many states, it's also a gray area. That is number one. And number two is, looking a little bit futuristic once the council comes and so on, thinking in that direction, we have put this. And the third reason is also in case you're working under supervision of an ophthalmologist in some manner, let it be tertiary vision eye hospital or something like that, then definitely a cycloplegic refraction, if warranted, can be done by the optometrist. Coming to other tests, as far as the document is concerned, it deals with ocular motility, binocular vision, and then ocular and systemic health assessment, and the supplemental testing. The ocular motility basically talks about the directions in the cardinal directions that you actually check, then whether they have any phorias, tropias, and vergence measurements. Then comes the systemic, where it's most to do with ocular and systemic, where it's to do with the slit lamp examination, measurement of intraocular pressure, and viewing the posterior portion of the eye, that's the vitreous, and the retinal examination. Visual field testing, we said wherever indicated can be added in this, or can go as a supplement test as well, wherever you see the need to do it. And some people might have retinal cameras, so that comes under supplementary testing, and OCT, gonioscopy, pachymetry, and all of that. Now, keep in mind that this is just a document for comprehensive eye exam. We do not have documents related to a contact lens eye exam or a binocular vision assessment or a low vision assessment. Those we are building it up slowly. Contact lens one is available, and that all those documents will be going as annexures. So in the annexures, let's say, for example, if you look at a contact lens document, that will have dry eye assessment. If you look at, let's say, a glaucoma assessment or a glaucoma specialty, that will have some of the other tests that are included. So many of these supplementary tests would be covered in one of the other of the annexures that will be included to this particular document on best practices. In conclusion, we also say how we go about dispensing. I have not put that slide here for want of time, but it basically tells how accurate the dispensing of spectacles should be. You have to call the patient in, put the spectacles on the patient, make sure that the vision is okay, they're feeling comfortable with the glasses and stuff like that. So that's accurate dispensing. And also at the same time, in case we are referring the person, the referral letter should have all the details in terms of vision, slit lamp examination, and all the procedures that you've done. And at the same time, explaining the reason why you're referring the patient to the ophthalmologist or general physician or wherever you're referring the person to. It also says that you need to have a list of referral doctors, be it public sector, private sector, specialists, and so on. So in future, it would become a necessity for you to have a list of referral centers where you can actually refer the patient for certain conditions. So that would become a necessity once the profession tends to get regulated through the government and so on. So this is, we are thinking ahead of time. And once we start following these standards, then implementation of that, once the government bill comes, becomes much, much more easier. So this is the reason basically for having this esteemed panel to discuss the document and to discuss the reason for it, and also how we're going to implement it in a large scale. So let me introduce all the panelists that I have here. So if I change the, I'll stop sharing the screen. So I'll start with Puneet. Puneet is a young practitioner. If you can just wave, Puneet, so that people will know who you are. So he's a young practitioner from Gurgaon. Then Sharanya, who is heading the Achta College of Optometry in Erode. And Suzanne, many of the Lawrence and Mayo people who are attending, I think, will be familiar with Suzanne. She helps with all the professional services with regards to Lawrence and Mayo. Then, of course, the star of today, Nilesh Titte, who will be chairing the session here. Pancham Kulkarni, who is an educator as well as a practitioner in Mumbai. He's an educator at Lotus College of Optometry. And Dr. Ramesh, who heads the Manipal College of Optometry and is a scientist and has his own innovation center with regards the eye. I think I'm not sure of the name of the company, but they've also floated a company of their own through these innovative procedures which the students develop. So that's the panel, and the document which I described is what we are going to discuss. So over to you, Nilesh, now.
Thank you so much, Lakshmi. I think thanks so much for the lovely bit of introduction as well. It's a bit scary actually when you have such eminent panelists and you have to ask them questions. So I'm actually a little scared. So I need your support and your backing in between. Okay.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. First of all, I think thank you so much for considering me in the part of this discussion, because practice standards and the topic is so important and it is close to my heart also. You would remember that I've also worked on some similar documents in past.
Yeah.
And when you said this is something,
the ILOCS document.
ILOCS, right?
Yeah. So where we had to put down what's the objective of each of the variable that will be tested and what's the end result. So you developed the document.
Yeah.
From
so
that side, yeah.
We had a wonderful team and finally we could come up with a document which can be useful, right? And that's exactly why when you said we have a discussion around this topic, I think I was very happy that you considered me. So thanks, first of all, Lakshmi and Paula, both of you. And now we have some wonderful panelists here, um, each of them colleagues of mine, and very happy to see Ramesh and Susan. I think been a while since we last met, and at least virtually now we are meeting, right? Saranya and Puneet and Pancham, at least on some other webinars we've been meeting, but these two meeting after a long time. So welcome all of you. And I think this is going to be a very interesting discussion. So all those who are listening to this discussion on Facebook Live, this is very useful, very important, and we would like to hear your views as well. So if you can, comment your questions on the live session, that would be great. We'll try to take as many as possible, of course, depending on how much the time permits. But please share your views and your comments and your questions in the comment section on Facebook Live, right? So I think I'm going to start with a very, very generic and very uh, a question which probably Sharanya would be happy to answer, which is, how was your experience? Because I heard you were a part of developing and formatting this document. And when I did something of this sort, I really enjoyed it because the team had worked a lot and I knew this is going to be very useful for the profession, right? And you were a part of developing this one. So just take us through your experience.
Hi, Nilesh, and thank you, CI and Lakshmi, for having me here. When I actually got into optometry, it was almost like an afterthought. Didn't get into medicine, then got into optometry. But the thing that my dad said when I was joining optometry is, you're going to be among the first few batches, so you have a chance to make a difference. So I think the guidelines was part of making a difference, and I think that's the main thing that I actually enjoyed very much about organizing and working with regards to the guidelines. Why are the guidelines important? A whole host of reasons. Practicing in UK, any place that I went to for either a job or an interview, it was pretty much said. They had these guides. You had to work within those guidelines, within the framework. So I could just walk into any practice and start working as long as I knew what those guidelines were. And anybody who had to practice in UK, be it a graduate from their own country or be it a graduate from another country, would have to go through those professional qualifying exams. Right. So that professional qualifying exam basically checks whether you know all your guidelines, your laws regarding practice, what are the normal practice routines, and every individual organization has their own. They have the whole named guidelines, but they don't tell you, like Lakshmi said, vision can be measured either with a Snellen or a Logmark. That depends on each individual practice. It was up to each practice to decide what they wanted to do. Tonometry, some practices allowed you to do applanation, but most of them had, the non-contact ones. So again, they had a guideline which said anybody over the age of 40, you would have to do these set of things. Anybody who was under the age of 60, you had to do these set of things. So it kind of made practicing a lot more easier and more uniform. So you could go into any store or any optometry practice or an ophthalmology practice, and you would have the exact same routine done. So the patient also had so much confidence, and patients who have been having tests done regularly would be able to tell you have missed this. So it kind of worked on both ways. And again, legality, whenever any of these issues come up in court for negligence or things like that, because the laws over there in UK are very, very strong, peer review. So if most of your colleagues were doing the same thing, you were okay. Because if you've done those tests and in spite of that, something has happened, you wouldn't be held negligent. You may be held, responsible but not negligent. So, it protects the optometrists to have these guidelines as well. So I think that is why it is absolutely essential. I mean, building your own practice, building a building, you're going to have a plan, you're going to have permissions, and then you're going to go and build it. So at some point when we have this legal status in India, then this is going to help us say, look, we already have a plan and we're following the plan. Right. So I think that is where, working in the guidelines was something which was very interesting.
Awesome. Thanks so much, Saranya. And I think we are lucky that we have, the luxury of having panelists. They are representing, various domains within optometry. For example, we have Pancham and Susan from the private practice side. We have Ramesh from the academia side, you from the hospital and academia side, and also Puneet, who's a fresh graduate. So what I'm going to do
Absolutely.
is you actually raised a valid point, which is what is the importance of this document? And I'm going to throw the same question to all of them. To begin with, I think I'm going to ask this to Pancham because he's a standalone private practitioner. So he's representing that particular community here. Let's say that. So Pancham, what do you think from a standalone private practitioner's point of view? What is the importance of these guidelines?
Okay, good evening, everyone. See, I think I'm grateful to OCI for, taking an initiative and creating a
Right.
guideline because, this is setting a benchmark for all optometrists to follow.
Mm-hmm.
So initially there was no benchmark. What was taught to us in undergrad, everyone used to follow that. But now we have a benchmark which we need to follow. And what this does is basically we don't miss any diagnosis, especially for a fresh optom. So if you go about following this protocol, I think 95% of the time you don't miss any diagnosis at primary eye care center. Now optometrists are primary eye care professionals. So if you miss a diagnosis at an early stage, it is going to balloon into more serious complication. Okay,
Right.
so I think this document is very much needed because it is going to deliver more the eye care more efficiently. So I'm totally in support with this of this document and grateful again to OCI for this.
Thanks, Pancham. I think I'll.
Also, you don't, I think the other thing that, as Pancham was saying, I kind of agree that it also makes sure that we are taking care of some of the problems at our level itself and not really referring everything to the ophthalmologist, because the number of ophthalmologists are less in our country, as everybody knows.
Absolutely. So I'm just going to ask the same question to Susan, and Susan can answer from a point of view of a retail chain where you have more stores, more number of optometrists. How is this relevant to you, Susan? You'll have to unmute yourself.
Sorry, Nilesh and the rest of my esteemed panelists, having a standardized document clearly sets a fantastic standard for everybody in an optometry school to aspire to, which means when I graduate from optometry, I come out with some certain core competencies. Your document ensures that I move away from a refractionist or an assistant to being a primary eye care professional. A primary eye care professional delivers vital care to the community. Because this is a standardized document and I represent a pan-India organization, this ensures that the same level of care is something that everybody will have in every corner of the country. So it is a fantastic aspiration. For somebody like me, it is a dream come true. And there's not much more one could ask for, especially in today's day and age where Sharanya stressed on history taking and things like that, how important it is and how necessary it is to document it. From history taking, we've now moved to triaging, where you ensure that you get all the important details that enable you to deliver the best care possible in today's day and age of COVID times and things like that. So just how the path has been set for us to be able to do our job better and better each time.
And thank you so much for raising that point that, we need to think of ourselves beyond refractionists and a primary eye care professional, right? So let's look at ourselves as a complete comprehensive eye care examination point of view and not just refraction. And then that leads to, Ramesh, because Ramesh is representing an academic organization. So what sense does it make to you, Ramesh, the same document?
Thank you, Nilesh, and good evening, everybody. It's nice to be here with this good colleagues of mine. If you look at from a higher education or any education point of view, the most difficult part to really train is the attitude part, how to communicate with a customer that you will be entering, or a patient who has been already in agony or pain with some diseases. So the framework gives them a route map to say, okay, as a teacher, as an educationist, I take, for example, last 1 year, we've been working on outcome-based curriculum, and we looked at all the framework. So when we do that, the knowledge part is the most easiest of all because abundance of knowledge part is there. And as a institution or education providing, like a Manipal Academy of Higher Education or any of the education institutes, we look at how do we entertain our competency towards psychomotor, that is skill. But when we implement it to the students, they get perplexed because when they go out, they see a varied standards of practice, right? When they go to internship or when they look at their own practice outside, it is not really standardized as in other countries. So, for example, MAHE is among the 3 institutes in India we started looking at European Council accreditation. So we always used to show to the students, like, this is the requirement, the competency requirements that you have to follow if you are looking at practicing as a global practitioner. So our thing is, my child from optometry should not just be an optometrist for our country, but for the global, because Vasudhaiva Kutumbakam is what we are all going into, right? So it's a global community of professional eye care. And this step that we have now taken, and it's been there from behind our minds for a long time, and thanks to OCI for tabling it now, because it is very crucial, where the student now sees, why is the faculty pushing me towards that? Okay, why am I saying you need to also practice how you talk? Okay, because it's a skill that you have developed. It doesn't come by just teaching, right? You know, the way you talk to a patient is very important. You become good after about 10 years, but from an education's point of view, these guidelines gives the student a clear view. Okay, if I'm learning these things, this is why, if I'm going to be a clinician, this is what I'm supposed to minimum attain. Okay, these are, let me put it as, these are minimum standards that has been set in. And then as an education institute, I inculcate our responsibility is to bring that critical thinking. Okay, why did you select these battery of tests? How do you make that evidence-based approach towards, like, you know, why this decision has to be made? So this kind of higher level of thinking, if we start giving to our students when they come to the 3rd year and final year, I'm sure our profession already, we have abundance of exposure because of the population that we have in a country. But if you look at individual competencies, and with the vision of our council coming into play, this document is a first step to bring in some discipline in our quality of practice.
And it's always better to inculcate the right habits in the beginning, right? Rather than changing them later on.
Yeah.
Catch them young. Catch them young.
We say, "Aindil vilayadadu, aimbadil vilayadu." If you have to practice something, start early.
Start early, right? Yeah.
I like to just comment, Nilesh. So one thing, when we were, if Sharanya remembers, I don't know. So when we were doing this document, when we referred to other documents, they had a whole lot of things to say regarding communication. You know, because we were doing it for the first time, I was getting bogged down. I was like saying so much on communication, so much of importance, because for me itself, it was an eye opener. It's like, you know, of course, we do history taking, and we introduce ourselves to the patient and stuff like that. But unless and until you put it down in writing, right, and say that this is something that needs to be followed, then it really doesn't strike you. It's like, why is it so important? I used to go back and ask, why is this thing so important? Then you know, after discussions, I kind of said, yes, this is really very important.
It is actually important.
Really very important.
Yeah, and I think it is such a straightforward thing. It's such a given thing that we take it for granted. That's the problem, right? And then we realize that communication is probably the most important thing in in all the relationship, whether it is student, educator, patient, and practitioner, or even husband and wife, right? So communication is the key to all the relationships, right?
So if I may just chip in before we go to
yeah, of course. Go ahead, Ramesh.
In this sprint, the main challenge from education point of view was, how do we evaluate, right? You know,
so I'm gonna pause you a little bit here, because that we are going to discuss the challenges, because I think we need to discuss it in a bit more detail. So we'll come back to you. Now, as we have heard from the Educational Institute, let's go across to Puneet, who is recently graduated from an educational institute. And does it really make sense to you, Puneet? You think it is important, or ये senior लोग ऐसे ही बातें कर रहे हैं, ऐसे कुछ लग रहा है आपको?
No. Good evening, sir, and everybody. So I have to state that this is not only important for the optometrist, this is ultimately beneficial for the patients. The patients are now ensured that they will get the best practice standards.
So first of all, I want to compliment you for that particular answer. And I agree that if you think from the patient's point of view, everything will be fine. There's just one mindset. If we change, instead of thinking from our point of view, what is the best for patient? If we just start thinking on those lines, I think we'll do a phenomenal job. So thank you for bringing that upfront. Please continue.
And so talking about from the perspective of a young graduate or a young practitioner who sits in front of a patient, this document fills us with confidence and reduces our chances of errors. So we are now relaxed that we know what we are doing. This is the right way, and the council has recommended us to do this. So this is the only procedure we have to follow. Now, as Saranya ma'am has also mentioned, it keeps us safe in the legal matters also. So
Right.
we are safe that we are doing the right thing. It is nothing illegal. We are all allowed to do this into our practice. We know what we can do and what we have to refer. We have the referral guidelines also with us.
So in a way, the document tells you what to do and also why to do. I think that is important. And when we teach our students a particular thing and we tell them the scope of that and the requirement of why we are doing it, I think it makes it easy for them to imbibe that. Would you agree to that, Punit?
Yes, sir, definitely. And suppose if now COVID era is going on, if I get sick, I somehow get sick with any disease, I am on leave for 10 or 15 days, then I have the document ready. The second optometrist is also the same competent to take up the patient. The patient will get the same services. So this ensures the same quality maintains within the organization, within the optometrist clinic, and the patient will get the same services in spite if the same practitioner is available there or not.
Right. So it is a dream, which is basically, it is not a subjective. It is not a person dependent thing. It is system oriented. So every other person will also follow the same steps, right? Thanks,
Yes.
Punit. I'll come back to you.
If I had a magic wand, I'd like to clone Puneet into many, many, many optometrists. Because this is music to my ears, coming from a young practitioner, really being sensitive to the patient, as well as being sensitive to all the procedures being done in a standard format. It's absolutely,
Yeah.
as I said, if I had a magic wand, I can see Sharanya like smiling,
No. But if we had magic wands, we would have created so many Lakshmi Shindes, so many Saranyas, so many Susans, so many Panchams already, right? So unfortunately, not happening.
That's not happening.
You have to do the hard bit.
I think we are doing a good spell now. Like,
Yeah,
we are
I think we are
getting
doing-
word spread through this good
Yeah.
portal. I think we are
We are doing our bit.
we are doing our bit, and that is, thanks, Puneet. That is a very, very, very important argument for it. Yeah.
See, this is one of the reasons
I
why I'm
also-
always eager to listen to the youth, because they come up with some brilliant
Absolutely.
ideas, and probably we've overlooked certain things and they actually, tell us what we are overlooking. So it's great to listen to these guys. So Puneet, I'm going to come back to you a little later. Sharanya, did you want to add something?
Yeah, no, I was just going to say I would like to compliment Puneet's mentors because a lot
Thank
of
you.
what is
Thank
coming
you.
through.
One of them.
Honestly, I didn't know Nilesh was your mentor.
No,
but
I'm not
for
taking
what
it.
it's worth, no. I think for someone to have imbibed these concepts, to have understood these concepts, their mentors have done something right somewhere.
Absolutely.
So, congratulations to the mentors.
Yeah, of course, Sharanya, you really brought up a very important point. So congratulations and compliments to all the mentors, and not just Puneet's mentors, but mentors of all this youth who are doing a phenomenal job. So I'm asking a very relevant question now, and this is mainly to Pancham and Susan. So either of you can answer it first. Now, we just heard from a young graduate's point of view. Now, you are in private practice. Suppose you want to have optometrists in your clinic, okay? Because you alone may not be able to manage so many things. So you want to appoint an optometrist, employ an optometrist. What do you expect? What are your expectations from the young graduate optometrists who are going to come and work with you?
Okay, if you want, I can go ahead first.
Yeah, go ahead, Pancham.
Okay, see, basically when the new optometrists come to me, they are very good at diffraction and the basic skills, no doubt. I think somewhere where they are lacking is probably the communication skills. I think Lakshmi man spoke about that. I mean, right from greeting the patient, because they come from a hospital background in their internship. So in hospital has a very high patient inflow. And when you move to a private practice, it is patients come to us, because they want that personal touch. They don't want that quick refraction and quick eye checkup, which is generally done in a hospital type of a setup. So they're still in that mode. So we need to counsel them, yes, you need to spend some more time. This is a private practice. So people are generally coming to you for a second opinion or to re-examine their refraction. Right. And sometimes you need to tell them how to, give the message across also. Like suppose like somebody has a glaucoma or a cataract. So, they're very blunt in saying that. So we need to counsel them in the communication skills. You need to, put that in a very sensitive manner. Like, you don't want to scare the patient, because if you scare him, he's next time not going to come to you.
Correct.
So you have to, those skills I feel lacking a bit. And another thing what I've observed is, I don't know why this trend is there. The optometrists don't want to, sell the glasses and recommend any glasses or for spectacle lenses or frames. They somehow are just satisfied with the refraction part
With diffraction.
and counseling, and that's it. They don't want to, because that is such an important aspect. What lens to wear, the measurements, which frame will ideally, suppose a progressive error, which frame is ideally going to suit the patient. The sales staff is not qualified to do all this. The sales staff, just trying to think what is going to generate more profit. They don't know the technical aspects of it. So I feel, I think it's there. I saw that in the document also.
Yeah, it's there
That,
in the document, yes.
then document. So that just clicked in my mind. That is also an important integral part of a optometrist, and they should, look into it.
Yeah.
Right.
It
So-
goes to quite an extent in terms of dispensing Pancham. So,
Yeah, part of dispensing.
Yeah, it's
And
part
Jim, actually, some of it, I think, stems from the fact that they think that's what an optician is meant to do. They don't realize that, we are supposed to guide what the optician is supposed to do. So I think that stems from that sort of a prejudice which exists in a lot of minds. They find it very strange that I sometimes walk out of my room once I see the patient. I take them to the store, explain what I want them to wear. I explain to my staff what exactly I want them to give, and then tell them, come and confirm with me before you actually dispense anything.
Right.
Sometimes it may not be the most expensive progressive. I may just give them a pair of intermediate glasses because that's all they need.
So that's the need
So
of depending on what is the need of the patient and what is the best solution.
Absolutely. So it's absolutely essential. I totally agree with you.
Good points, Pancham. Thanks so much. And I'm sure the academicians and the young students are listening to this. They'll make a note of that. Anything from your side, Susan? Ramesh, I'll come to you.
Certainly, Nilesh. So here again, it's repeating, moving from refractionist to primary eye care.
Yep.
If you consider that India is going to be the diabetic capital of the world, the fact that you are so accessible as an optometrist to the community, the fact that you will do a fundus exam and you will ensure that they get the necessary secondary care that will preserve their sight, because it's preventable sight loss. And
Right.
if you say that we are going to be close to 70 million diabetics in 5 years' time and close to 80 million diabetics by 2030, then this is an important thing to be delivered. So moving from being just refractionists to primary eye care providers is absolutely essential. I would also take off from where Pancham said, where he felt that counseling the patients and customers that we see is so very important, because you are providing eye care solutions. You are not selling them glasses.
True.
You have understood clearly what their requirement is, and you need to provide those solutions. So in today's day and age, we're talking about very much more web lenses, home and office and things like that, because people are just stuck indoors. They need you to guide them.
Absolutely.
And that is very important.
I think I like the point where you raise diabetes. I think that is becoming such an important issue now. And we being the first line of defense, I think we need to be able to start doing the screening test and whatever is required to pick diabetes at an early stage, right? So absolutely love that point. Yes, Ramesh, you wanted to say something, is it? Yeah, go ahead. And I'll come back to Saranya if you have any points as well.
So thanks to Pancham and Susan, I think the points that you raised are the primary thing that we think of when we look at competency delivery from a higher education point of view. The first thing that we had to look at is, I would like to address what Susan ma'am said, because that is being a clinician and as an evidence-based practitioner, I would like to push this thought process or the clinical skills. So we have to make it very mandatory that we should move away from direct ophthalmos alone, but with slit lamps that are being quite commonly used, looking at the retina through the ophthalmoscopy, binocular stereo biomicroscopic evaluations will help solve most of our problems. Okay, and today in India we are having affordable imaging systems that makes us much more objective in nature. So a young practitioner who's trying to difficult to look at the retina, but you could invest in imaging technique and use that as a telehealthcare and recommendation, so that your role as a optometrist is growing just from being an refractionist to a professional. Okay, so you are, as we train our students from the second year onwards, we focus mainly on, hey, why do they need to really focus on not just learning a technique of doing Satlam, but they need to also look at how competent are they to do those examinations and how critical thinking are they. See, that is where one level of education has to start from every education thing is, can they make a logical and a scientific reasoning of, oh, I see a certain lesion in the eye, and that is where this is leading to. So those are frameworks that we have to really start in our curriculum itself. And that is what many of our institutes in India have been really focusing on. And the aspect of dispensing, the fine art of dispensing is how we introduce here in our curriculum, is to say that, why it is important not to just give a refraction and give a prescription to a patient. We need to guide them through and select the process. So we do a lot of mock exercises in our curriculum. So, we give them those troubleshooting aspects and want them to really comment with us and be a volunteer patient. They have to convince me or any other volunteer before they go into internship year.
Right.
So it all starts from the mindset of, oh, I've been trained in that way. So that is where I really want to echo as an educationist, and also say to my colleague education providers, we have to really imbibe this thought that, hey, this communication aspects and these aspects of fine art of dispensing and scientific retinal evaluations and other skills are something that you can't just finish off within just by giving a theory exam, theory class.
Right.
So you have to be more innovative in a way of
Right.
teaching. Then students are
Right.
very spark, they can buy it.
So thanks, Ramesh. It's heartening to know that you are already implementing these steps and you're already looking in that direction. Puneet, do you agree to this? What these guys are saying, that these are also important aspects of the optometrist domain and skills. And do you think you were trained enough for that?
Yes, sir, I agree with all the esteemed panelists.
Okay.
The
You don't have to. You can disagree. That's okay.
No, sir. Actually, I agreed, because when Pancham sir said that we need to know the technicalities also, we need to know
Right.
which suits the patient, we need to know about dispensing and other specialties too. There's one more point I want to keep the conversation going on, which is what the younger optom expects from an organization, optometrist clinic.
Absolutely. Now the other way around.
Yeah. So, am I audible, sir?
Yeah. Go ahead. You're very audible.
Okay, so the first one is you try to make them involved in a creative way. Give them some activities or anything. They are very enthusiastic in spreading awareness. As
Okay.
today's 23rd, you might see your social media flooded with posts regarding optometry. #optometry, #iCare. Why? Because there's a group running Optometry Students Power. That group, they create content over entire month, and then they post it on the 23rd, each 23rd of every month. So they are doing this voluntarily. Okay, why they are doing this? Because they are in need to spread awareness. They are very active into creative ways. They can do wonders actually into this sector. So if you involve them in a creative way, if you teach them in a creative way, they are very eager to join in. They're not looking for any pay raise or something to go anywhere else. What they require is the creative aspects and the comfortable environment to work in.
Thank you so much, Puneet. I think that's such a solid point and so good to hear that. And I have experienced that there is so much creativity. I think as seniors, we just need to channelize their energy and creativity in the right direction. Saranya, did you want to say something on that, or?
I think what Puneet is basically trying to say is quality of work life rather than just the paycheck that goes at the end of the month. I totally agree. We have different roles for each of our optometrists. Akshita, we have a system because basically I am an optometrist by profession. All optometrists get, I shouldn't probably be saying this out on social media, but yelled at if they don't see the fundus, if they haven't done a complete workup, if they have dilated before a Gomu has to be done. So it's more like we're looking at them as if you are in your own vision center, you have your own practice. I don't want you to mess up. I don't want somebody to lose vision because of a small little test that we could have easily done.
Yeah.
So for us, it's more of, refractions are important. Refractions are the basic bread and butter. You cannot give the wrong pair of glasses. But beyond the glasses, like Suzanne, Ramesh, and Pancham, and everybody else has been emphasizing, we get very upset when we get case sheets without fundus findings recorded, slit lamp findings recorded, and things like that. So I think it will come there. It will come to that in every practice, but I had to face a little bit of resistance from colleagues of ours who have said, if they do all this, what are we supposed to be doing? So I normally tell them surgery is what we're supposed to be doing. So let us do all this so we keep you busy in the theater. So my husband absolutely loves the fact that the optometrists literally run the clinic, and he just has these referrals that he's looking at, and he's in theater. It's made life very easy for him, according to him. And I've not been going for a couple of months now. So now he comes home every day and he complains, this, if you were there, this could have all been managed. I'm like, yeah, thank you. So it works. So I think that's how important an optometrist is to any practice. So when they come to us for a job, these are the certain requirements that I look for. First of all, the refraction should be perfect. The second thing that I look for is when they come in, I normally ask them to see a patient. Patient, not a paying patient, it would be one of my staff that they will be examining. The first thing I look to see is whether they're saying, hi, hello, how are you? Before they start up saying, what's the problem? Why have you come in? So the communication, again, is what I'm looking at. I'm also looking at to see whether they're spending the time talking to the patient, but not so long that they're spending an hour with one patient. I still expect my turnaround time to be good. So I still expect them to finish a consultation in something close to 20 minutes to half an hour. But I don't expect them not to communicate and spend a whole hour with them, just having a chat. So that is something. I'm looking for a clear framework in their mind. I'm looking for triaging ability. I don't want them to be doing refraction on somebody who's come in with an infection. I want them to be definitely doing refraction on somebody who's come in with a broken pair of glasses. So these sort of things. So the sort of an overall holistically seeing the patient, being able to pick up, we have had cases where my optoms have picked up diabetics based on refraction alone. Yeah. They've had change of glasses every few months. It's been going higher, minus every few months. They come and tell me, ma'am, I think we should get these guys to get their fasting and post-prandial. Right. And they have turned out to be diabetics. So as an optometrist, there's so much that we can do. So I think it is absolutely essential for them to have all these skills.
Okay.
So
thanks so much, Charanya. Lakshmi wants to say something.
Just wanted to comment. Actually, I was itching to comment when Suzanne brought up that diabetic this thing. Then I said, okay, let me do it later. So we did run diabetic training programs, actually, which we did all over India in few cities and stuff like that in collaboration with Zeiss. And that was primarily the reason. Basically, what happened. I mean, I'm not saying this on a negative this thing. We learn everything when we are undergraduates. But what we implement is the question. That is the number one. And the second thing is you have to always need some kind of a push, okay, to say, yeah, this is something you cannot miss. This will be of service. This will make you stand apart from your competitor. So you have to talk sometimes in terms of business and revenue and stuff like that as well. In certain groups, because if you've been practicing, let's say for 8-10 years or something, and then you say, why would I do a diabetic? I've been practicing for so long. So for those kind of people, you have to say, this is something you have to do. You'll pick up diabetics if you do this. You will be of service, which you have to be even otherwise as a healthcare provider. And otherwise, in terms of business aspects, it also supports you and makes you stand apart from the other competitors. So that will also bring in revenue for you. So if you kind of put everything together, then it really works. That's from the diabetic, point of view that I just wanted to make that comment.
You're absolutely right, Lakshmi. We need to deliver the care that we would hope to receive.
Yes.
So if we are going to deliver care which is half-hearted, then I mean,
Isn't it?
that's where the matter ends, really, isn't
Yeah,
it?
that's right. Yeah.
And if we're going to uplift our profession from being refractionists to being professionals in our own right, then we have to deliver absolutely everything. Picking and choosing tests because we now understand their value and taking it forward. So, I mean, like you say, there are certain tests you would get rid of. As Sharanya rightly said, I don't want you to do certain things on somebody who so obviously requires different care. I want you to be completely well informed and pick the right things for that point in time.
Yeah, that's right.
Lovely. I think it's Ramesh, you have a point. Just
Yeah.
before I allow Ramesh, let me remind all the viewers on Facebook, if you want to ask any question, this is the time. Post your question there and we'll pick the relevant ones. We'll ask the questions to the panelists. Yeah, Ramesh, go ahead.
Yeah, so just 2 points I would like to just quickly say. So one aspect is like, whenever, though I'm not been a independent practitioner, I've mostly been in hospital setup, and now
Right.
we have our own optometry wellness clinic, which is one of our brainchilds that we want to provide our students and hands-on dispensing and a private practice kind of an exposure, because that's where optometrists are supposed to be in, is what we now focus. So one thing that we were looking at is like, when I discuss with my colleagues, they say, hey, patients go, they don't ask this here. They first ask, are you a doctor? Are you a regulator? All these questions comes. But now, since we are going, this guideline kind of a framework that we have created is creating that benchmark wherein we have a clear guideline. Like, I'm not doing it for the sake of putting a doctor in front of me, but I'm a professional. We care for your eyes. That message goes very well when we start implementing these standards in our practice. And that is what, when the regulatory frameworks comes into play, that's what we are going to be looked at with more binocular eyes, right? So we don't want our practice to be quack or my students' practice to be named as quack, because at the very early phase of any council activity, there's a lot of hustle fuzzle is going to happen till it gets to a plateau, right? When you as a practitioner get these disciplines and start providing the best professional care, you are always on a smooth curve to success. That is one thing. And then the one way that we started bringing them, as Susan ma'am and others, we were talking about how to select even a visual acuity chart or depending on what the patient needs. The one twist I made, with which I imbibed from the Canadian way of eye care, is after history taking, we started introducing look at the retina. Why should we wait for an end exam like looking at the retina? Because most of us trained in ophthalmological setup at where I come from, it's like optometrists were collecting data at the slit lamp, deciding when to dilate, and then the clinician was seeing it. But in a private practice, if I know the answer right away, retina mein there is a macular hole, then I wouldn't waste my time doing a hardcore cycloplegic refraction, a duochrome balancing on him, but right away start with a low vision kind of an approach when the patient is there with me for 20 minutes. So now you have those possibilities. Take your DO, look at the retina, or now if you don't want to go with COVID time closer, take a 90D and look at the retina after a history. So you'll know what you're expecting, right? If there is a cataract clouding or whatever the disease is, then your battery of tests will be more streamlined. The 20 minutes, as what ma'am was saying, you'll effectively spend what is relevant to the patient and not doing just a checklist kind of a thing. Maine ye test kiya, ye test kiya, ye test kiya, ye test kiya, ye sab ho gaya. Abhi kya? Why do you do it? Has to be a logical framework where my way of approaching or our way of approaching here at Mahe is in our optometry wellness clinic. I wouldn't be, this is not what we do in the Kasturba hospital, but in our clinical facility, after history, we do look at the retina, and then the student has to talk to the optometry faculty colleague. Hey, what all tests are you going to do, and why are you going to do? As we spend some time with this patient. Yeah, that's one thought we are doing now.
Thanks, Ramesh. Meanwhile, we have a question on the Facebook, and because it is from Tamil Nadu, I think I'm going to straight away ask it to Saranya. It's specific to Tamil Nadu, that's why. So Saranya, the question is, why are optometrists considered as technicians in Tamil Nadu? Very ground level question, very direct question.
Yeah, I think good question, very good question. I think part of the fault lies with us. I'm sorry to say. Yes, there is already a stereotype mentality which is certain where we are considered to be working under someone rather than working with. But I think we are also perpetuating the whole myths by staying refractionists alone. A lot of my classmates are now coming for observations at Achyuta for skills. So skill-based examinations like learning how to be competent with the slit lamp, learning how to be competent with tests of binocular vision and things like that. So if we aren't elevating ourselves,
Correct.
nobody is going to elevate us. So if we don't blow our own trumpets, nobody is going to do that for us. So I think
and just to add to
Yeah.
that, to blow our own trumpet, we need to have substance, right?
Absolutely. Absolutely. Totally agree with you on that. Now we have people here at, asking us when we are going to get our first batch of graduates. So I'm happy that they're already asking me that.
Right.
Because now they're saying if somebody likes who comes out, who's trained by you at the level that you're training them, because they come to the hospital for classes. So when they see our optometrist, when they see my first years doing a proper motility test, when they see my first years doing a proper pupil examination, they know by the time they're going to come to the final year, they're going to do a complete comprehensive examination with a flowchart in their mind. So I think we have to elevate ourselves. If we elevate ourselves, then we're no longer going to be called technicians. I don't have a problem being called a technician as long as they understand I'm a primary eye care technician. I'm happy with being a primary eye care technician. I don't have a problem with that. But I want the name of being a primary eye care specialist technician. So primary eye care specialist is what I'm working at.
Okay. Thanks, Varun. Now we have a few minutes left, and I have a question mainly for the practitioner. So again, this is more for Pancham and Susan, and if others want to add, they can definitely add. So we've been talking about the practice guidelines. Pancham and Susan, have you already implemented them, or are you in process of implementing them? And if yes, what could be the difficulties in implementation, or what would you have faced as difficulties for implementation?
I mean, yes. I mean, when I went through the document, I was happy that, like most of the processes we are already following in our practice.
Okay.
And to talk about some difficulties, see, I didn't feel any difficulty because the main difficulties can come in the referrals but my area has a very good ophthalmologist to patient ratio. We have plenty of corneal, retinal, as well as UVS specialist in my area. We have got 2 low vision aid centers. So as such, referrals has not been a problem. Can't think of any specific problem as of now, I can say.
So you were happy. It was easy for you to implement, not much of a hassle.
No, I mean, see, now I was lucky that this is a family-run business. So when I joined in, a lot of systems were already in place. Again, fortunately, my dad is an optometrist, so that also helped. So I didn't start from scratch. So I mean, the flow was already there, and I just added to that.
And also because it is one practice, so the control is easier, right?
Correct. Yeah.
You could control it more easily. Maybe Susan, it could be a little bit different from you.
Yes, Nilesh, the document now will put in place what we can aspire to achieve pan-India. And that is really important because our duty of care, if we set out what our duty of care is, then we will achieve it. And everybody, irrespective of where they are in the country, will be assured of competent primary eye care. So this document really is achievable, it's aspirational, it's doable, it is everything that I could hope for. And
awesome.
I mean, need I say more? I can only hide my excitement in saying how important and special it is, and we must do it. Doing pre-qualifying exams will consolidate this knowledge that has been put in there. Our young graduates will come out so much more confident, so much more sure that they believe in themselves and will be able to deliver everything that this document says we can deliver. And it will just uplift our profession completely. So, I mean, that's my wish list and everything all combined.
No, actually the excitement is very visible on your face, Susan. And I think OCI can take some credit for that.
Yeah.
You managed to bring smiles on people's faces.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah. And, there's always criticism from somewhere or the other in terms of, this is just comprehensive eye exam. How are we going to do it? How are we going to do this? And how can you expect to do a fundus examination or, intraocular pressure check and stuff? I just have a small analogy, which I think most of you can actually relate to. You know, when we started, Susan and Sharanya also, and even Pancham might be familiar with this. You know, when we started training people for progressive addition lenses, correct?
Yeah, I was there.
Nilesh, you will, yeah,
Oh,
you were one of the participants. You will be very aware. In those days, I mean, the kind of backlash initially when we were getting, oh, इतना expensive है, क्यों advise करना है? ये भी plastic है, bifocal भी plastic है, दोनों plastic है, इतना महंगा कौन खरीदेगा? All that, but we just stood our ground and continued to do it. And see, now it's become a norm. If you are presbyopic, the first thing that's advised is a progressive.
progressive addition lens.
You know, and now it's in fact going overboard, where you have to, in some optometrists, you have to tell them,
Just
this
hold on.
this work does not require a progressive. Maybe he needs another additional reading pair along with the progressive, because he needs to do so and so job. So it's now gone the other way around. So that's what I'm saying. So I think we've made the right pitch, if I can say that. We've made the right pitch to say this is what it needs to be. Of course, the annexures we are going to add in terms of specialty examinations and stuff like that. But I think, this is going to help us in terms of reaching that standard, which we actually ought to have to start with. We ought to have that. But unfortunately, since we are not there, this is something we have to achieve. And I think even with the government coming up with the bill, or be it the new educational policy, where Suzanne was trying to tell us about the examination, pre-practice exam or something like that. If we can come out with some of that, I think it will be absolutely so supportive of what we want to achieve with this document as well.
Awesome. Yeah, Ramesh.
Yeah. Lakshmi, one aspect is we guys from research and also from clinical thing, we are adding more use cases of presbyopia for PAL. We are even bringing in myopia control as PAL as one of the good forms. So don't worry, PAL is going to be there for long, and we'll ensure that
PAL is our PAL.
PAL is our
PAL. Right.
No, I gave it as an analogy, Ramesh. That's all.
Yeah. No. I see, the way I'm looking at is this, when I looked at this document earlier on, one aspect was, as a single practitioner, they all think that but it is not much of investment in comprehensive eye examination. It doesn't put you on too much into that's why she has pulled down all the things like OCT, imaging. I would say gonioscopy has to go into regular thing, but as a glaucoma guy. But other than that, most of perimetry is not there as part of your armamentarium and all, right? By this way, what is going to happen is your basic infrastructure investment is not going to shoot up very high than a good clinic. One thing that's going to bring in is, my dream for a long time has been no free eye care, right? Let us not do a free eye test. By bringing in this professionalism, by putting in your professional self in front with these competencies and slowly increasing our objective examinations, like why can't optometrists have a perimetry in your place, or 2 or 4 of you have together, spend in OCT, spend in things. When you invest in these things, you will never offer yahan pe mera eye test free hai. No, because your time as a professional has to be really paid off. And that is what the youngsters...
so much, Ramesh, at your comment. Puneet is enjoying every bit of what you're saying.
I think today's youngsters are bringing that in. They don't want to give, my own student very clearly says, sir, I will not give free eye test. Even I will not give discount. I will say, even if I charge 100, 150, that is the time, professional time I'm spending with the patient, where I am looking at the comprehensive eye and providing you care. So this document is a route map to also achieving that goal, or that dream, I would say, wherein we'll say, why should I charge you? Because 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. I have put all these things in aligned to quality of eye care, right? That is one thing. Another last point is, as Susan ma'am and L&M have beautifully done their vision statement and their dream, other list of other competitive big chains, they have 9 tests, 12 tests, 14 tests, 16 tests. What to go in those 9, 12, 15 was mostly on their preference, but now they have a good guideline. So they can slightly really have to tweak in, so that those 9, 12, 11, 12, 15, 20, 100 tests you do, but do it for a cause, for, as Puneet beautifully said, patient first,
so
not the customer first.
It is so amazing to listen to, the practical or financial side from an academician, which generally does not happen. But it's really heartening to see that. And I absolutely like the point where, because every time you ask someone to do something, the first question is, no, yaar, that will cost me. Right. So how do you justify the cost? Is it actually that much? Is the cost actually that high? Number one. Number two, if you have to invest something, is it worthwhile investing in that? And once we have this value proposition, I think people understand. So thanks, Ramesh, for bringing in that
Neelesh,
aspect. Yeah, I'm going to allow you, Paula. I know that because this is the first time I'm seeing you after 1 hour. So please go ahead and raise your point.
actually, Ramesh sir has actually kind of,
Hit the
forced
nail.
me to speak pitch in, because exactly this was the thought when we we introduced the guidelines. The cost part was what we were discussing. Lakshmi ma'am would agree, and we were actually working on a document with list of instruments and various organizations which sell those instruments, and what will be the financial kind of investment if a person wants to set up a clinic. So we are kind of working on that kind of a document.
Wow.
And this is a good platform where I think we have just got the boost to keep working on that, and finally maybe introduce it very soon.
So Ramesh, these ladies are actually 2 steps ahead of us, man.
Yeah, awesome.
Yeah,
Yeah.
they're already thinking on the lines which
Right.
you're suggesting.
Segregated it into initial practice, then midway, and if you want
Specialty, yeah.
very expensive setup with all the gadgets, then how much it will cost. So
I think that would be a really good step.
So
That
One
will be
one
really
real
helpful.
strength that's going to come to us is with the council, with government support. The council comes into play. Getting a bank loan or getting some financial support to establish these investments will be more easier. Like how our colleague professionals, the clinicians with from ophthalmology and other colleagues easily
Right.
get those funds. That
Yeah.
will become easy for us also. So those hurdles have been taken care at various leaders at various levels. And the visionary with our prime minister, he did mention about this bill in the recent talk when he gave at RGHS. So it is something like, it is there in the front line, and now it is time for us to be prepared to deliver what is expected from the public health aspect. I think that is the responsibility each one of us have to take and also propagate.
Awesome, Ramesh. Unfortunately, we have overshot. So Lakshmi, quick.
take one question because I thought that is something both Sharanya also can pitch in. Basically, the question is, can diploma holders treat patient according to OCI? Is it legal? Treat is
Treat. What do you mean by treat?
Treat is a very tricky word. Please do not treat any diseases. Do not.
Say, in terms of writing therapeutic prescription, legally
not.
we are not allowed. We can do that if we are under supervision, but legally writing a
Independently.
prescription, we are not allowed, be it a diploma or a degree holder. Either one of them, we are not allowed.
It's more of a co-management word that we should use.
Treat can also mean giving them contact lenses. Treat can also mean giving them low vision.
Prescribing a pair of glasses.
Yeah, all of them. It is coming under.
Or treat a binocular vision disorder with vision therapy. That's possible, right?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
All of that comes under treatment. So
there's yet another question similarly saying, can we treat other ocular diseases because we don't have an ophthalmologist nearby? You cannot. Please do not cross your lines. When a few people cross the line, the entire profession suffers a huge setback. Please do not cross your lines.
And there are so many things to do.
Much to do with
Exactly my point. Exactly my point.
Please
People
do
say,
that.
I want to treat diseases. I said, do you know everything that an optometrist can do well enough? And are you doing that? If yes, come back.
See, let me
I have a therapeutics prescription, a sort of an authorization in UK. I can prescribe in the UK because I've gone through a separate therapeutics course, which is a year long. I have to go through so many vivas, exams. I have to write so many tests before they even allow me to do that. But I don't prescribe in India because I'm not allowed to prescribe in India.
True.
Yeah, so I think we need to stay within our lines.
Yes. Yeah.
Please do.
Very much, Sharanya. Very much.
So I would if I quickly add upon, the one thing that we have to really look at is learn about diagnostic drugs and be good at using the diagnostic drugs well.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
And know, because every dilation, even a diagnostic drug has complications, and are you taking responsibility? So now is the time saying that mere paas counseling nahi tha, we are only self-regulated, so koi nahi aake pooch rakta. No, that's not going to happen. You have to take responsibility. Negligence versus the aspect that Sharanya ma'am said is very important that we are taken. And
Right.
today COVID has opened up the telehealthcare hub to you. So
Okay.
don't limit yourself with just कि मैं prescription sign कर सकता हूँ. That's not something
Yeah.
very high. Don't give those so much of credit. Our professional ethos has to be maintained. We have our colleague ophthalmologists who have put in almost 10 years of their time,
Absolutely.
10 years of time to become what they are. It is not so easy to be an ophthalmologist, right? So we have to give them that real respect and not cross the line unnecessarily, but use telehealthcare effectively. Don't just WhatsApp everything. No, that's not telehealthcare. You have to really learn. That's what, as
Yeah.
Saranya said, for everything, today we have online courses for all of you. You get disciplined, and if you have that need in your practice that surrounding me ophthalmologist nahi hai, then it's a close thing. You can connect your patient to bigger hospitals, center of excellences like Eli Prasad, Shankar Nethralaya, AIMS. Everybody are ready to take in telehealth.
Right.
Connect with them, and you are now legally doing a practice wherein you are doing your job, and the clinician sitting there in the thing is reviewing what you have done,
Right.
and giving you the guidelines whether you can prescribe. And that is a valid.
And they send in their prescription. You are not giving the prescription.
Right.
So
Yeah.
Please provide the care. Don't back off. I would
Yes.
I salute you for doing that. Okay, please do provide that care, but do it with the pride and the legitimacy.
Awesome.
Absolutely.
So thanks, Ramesh. Thanks, everyone. Now we're almost at the end of the discussion. So what I'll do is I'll just go across each one of you, and maybe last closing comments, if you have a line or two, just as a closing comment for this discussion. Whom should we start with? Shall we start with the youngest one this time? Punit, you've been quiet for some time, so go ahead. What are your closing remarks for that? No, if youngest, probably I'll have to go to Ramesh. So I'll take the word back. Not youngest. We'll start with Punit.
So then I'm the third youngest. You're the first
Yeah,
one.
I'm also there.
So I'm thankful to OCI, and also I would like to add that as Lakshmi ma'am was talking about the diabetic course which was running by them and Zeiss. So I was one of the attendee into the course, and it was so good that I now know almost everything about how to manage, how to refer in diabetic cases,
Lovely.
when to refer, whom to refer. So these courses help us, and as Ramesh sir was talking about how tele-ophthalmology and teleoptometry is gaining momentum nowadays. So we should not just look on treating the patient. If we diagnose it correctly and refer it correctly, that's another achievement actually. And I want to thank OCI for the opportunity and to get me in a frame with all of these legends. It's really such a dream come true for me. Thank you, Neeraj sir. And
Pleasure is all ours. Trust me, the pleasure is all ours. Pancham, any closing remarks?
Yeah, pretty much a very good session, I must say. Good discussion we had. Few questions few questions which I have at personal level. Is this the whole document? And if not, then when is the full document going to get accessible to everyone?
It's there on our website, Pancham. The whole document is there on the website, in the sense, the concise, the summary points. But as far as the annexures are concerned, because we have only one annexure, we thought we'll compile all the annexures together and then release all of them together in terms of binocular vision, low vision, and all of
Is there a timeline decided for that, or like it's a work in progress?
Work in progress. I wish I could give you saying that I'll give it to you in 2 months' time. But I think that's something we look at within the next 2 months is what I can say. That, as well as the instrument budget, okay, that we are looking at in terms of initial practice, midway, and high level. So all those three, they're almost ready. We just have to tweak it a little bit. And those also, I mean, that can go hand in hand with the best practice as well, because then the practitioners will know how much of investment they need to do.
So maybe Lakshmi, just a quick suggestion, maybe on the Facebook post, you can comment the website again saying this is where the document is. So those who are watching and other people can always go back and refer. Thanks, Pancham. Susan, any comments?
Just a quick one, which is this fantastic document becomes a reality on an everyday basis. I really look forward to that.
Yeah, that would be a dream come true, right?
Absolutely.
Thanks, Susan.
That's marvelous comments. Marvelous. I think I would have made my day, if if somebody says that, my day is made.
Thank
Ramesh?
you, Lakshmi.
Ramesh, any closing comments?
It's a document that gives our students a very ready reckoner when we say to them, this is what is expected out of you, and this is why we are training you to at least the minimum. So because the brightest is easier, and the student with the lower theoretical marks and things, they also can aspire to achieve these things. So this is where I see this is a very good document. So that there is no parity. Anybody passing out of an optometric institute should have these competencies, and this is what we as educationers should test for, because an examination altogether is one good way, but there are costs and other things involved. Let that happen. But meanwhile, as an educationist, it is my responsibility and our team's responsibility to ensure that our students meet these competencies as we say them, they are graduated and successful enough to become part of our professional colleagues. That is one. And when I looked at this document, it really matches very well with the European and Australian every standards. Thanks for a very good work for making all our optometrists, not just an optometrist in India, but a professional who is ready for an international accrued optometry graduate. Thank you.
Thanks, Ramesh. Saranya?
Just one little thing. COVID may have shrunk our world to our homes, but we're now working on a global platform. Anybody can network anywhere as long as we have the right skills and the right attitude. Till I was at Shankar-Vijaya, I thought I was always doing things just because this was my home, alma mater. When I went to UK and I did the exam, and when I qualified at that exam, that gave me a big boost of confidence in my own abilities. So hopefully we have those competency exams coming in India as well, as some of the panelists mentioned. If we have that, we'll be actually empowering our optometry graduates with the confidence and the knowledge to come out and be very good practitioners. So here's hoping.
Thank you so much, Saranya. So thank you so much, guys. I thoroughly enjoyed this session and learned a lot as well. And always, it's lovely to connect with all the colleagues. So that's from my side. I'm going to hand it over to Lakshmi for just the final closing.
Yeah, thanks, everybody. Actually, I really enjoyed it, and
We can see that in your voice, on your face, everywhere.
Comments from Puneet initially when he just put the patient first. That was like, I think I've achieved what I wanted here. I mean, that really struck me, Puneet. I'm not exaggerating. You have no idea how happy I was when you said put patient first. It is absolutely heartening to hear.
Music to ears.
Music, absolute music to my ears. And I'm sure to Suzanne's also, because she's smiling. We really feel so happy that, as Sharanya said about your mentors, that they have instilled such values. And as long as you guys, the younger generation, think in that direction, I think our job is made. I will retire in pretty much a few years' time, I think. This is, great.
ये मैं बहुत सालों से सुन रहा हूँ. It doesn't happen.
It doesn't happen? Okay. You're waiting for my retirement, Nilesh. Okay, I got the clue.
Puneet, you'll have much to live up to. You know this, don't you?
No pressure, no pressure.
No pressure, exactly.
Okay.
So lovely time, and I hope everybody listening also enjoyed the session. And as me and Paula always say, that although we are the hosts, we also get to learn so much in each one of these sessions. Something new comes up, some new idea comes up, something that triggers us. So tomorrow I'll go and say, okay, let's start working on this document and this. So it's so heartening to.
Paula को tension आ गया. अब कल से क्या document?
Abhi kya bolegi na? And thanks to Paula, who's hosting everything and making all the background arrangements for all of this. So without her support, I know this wouldn't have been so smooth.
Awesome. So thank you very much, guys. See you around. Take care of yourselves.
Yes.
Stay safe.
Stay safe and healthy. Thank you. Thanks a lot.
All the best, OCI. All the best.
Thank you. Thanks, Nilesh. Wonderful session. Thank you.